In a recent video, I talked all about how to fish a Keitech style swim bait, but I really only talked about how to fish it on a jig head. But that is not the only way that you can rig up a Keitech style bait. So today, I want to talk about 5 different ways that you can rig up a Keitech that you may not be doing. So stay tuned, it's going to be a good one. This video is brought to you by sportsmansoutfitters.com. We are at the start of the summer. We have a lot of hot weather and a lot of cookouts ahead of us. And if you're looking for a new cooler, right now at Sportsman's Outfitters, you can get the Bruin cooler for a heavily discounted rate. We're talking big coolers, small coolers, hard coolers, soft coolers. So if you're on the market for a new cooler, you can get a great deal on one right now. Just click that link down below in the description. Most people know how effective a Keitech style swim bait is. And I say Keitech because they were kind of the original to make this ribbed style swim bait. A lot of other companies, Strike King has their own Rage Swimmer. There's a lot of companies that make this style swim bait, but the Keitech, in my opinion, is probably best. And a lot of us know how to fish a Keitech on a jig head. At the end of the day, this swim bait is just a soft plastic lure. And anything you do with other soft plastic lures, you can do with the Keitech. So let's jump into the ways that I like to rig it and when I like to fish it. Now, the first way to rig it that you may have not thought of is on a simple Carolina rig. A lot of us know what a Carolina rig is. We know how to fish it, but a lot of us, including myself, have not always thought to put a swim bait on the back of a Carolina rig. And this was something that I actually learned from a co-angler that was in my boat. Years ago, I was fishing a BFL on a lake called Mosquito Lake in Ohio. And that particular day, I was fishing some offshore stumps. And the guy that was in my boat, the co-angler, he pulled out a swim bait that he put on the back of his Carolina rig. And I'm going to be 100% honest with you. This was about 10 years ago. And when he pulled it out, I kind of thought it was funny. I'm like, I don't know about that one, bud. And of course, you know what happened. He caught the fire out of him and he caught the biggest bass between us during that day. Now, the reason that I kind of thought it was funny because I'm like, I don't know what that bait is really gonna do down there. It's probably gonna lay on its side half the time, but the truth is, it doesn't matter. It's just something that looks different to a bass. It's a unique way of fishing that Keitech that a lot of bass have not seen. So if you like to fish that Carolina rig, I really suggest trying to put a Keitech on it the next time you go out fishing. Now, one little side note when it comes to fishing a Carolina rig is I like to put a bobber stopper in between the weight of my rig and the swivel of my rig. That will actually protect that knot from that heavy weight and you won't bust off so many Carolina rigs. Now, the next way to rig up a Keitech is something that I've used a lot, and it is a very effective way at catching fish on that Keitech, and that is actually on a drop shot. This is really just kind of a standard drop shot rig, but I like to use a little bit longer shank hook, and I actually like to thread that Keitech onto that hook. Now, when I fish a Keitech on a drop shot like this, I don't really fish it the normal way that I fish a drop shot. Most of the time, I'm going to cast this bait out, and I'm going to do an extremely slow reel across the bottom. Now, one of the biggest reasons that I like to do this is because I like to keep my swim bait away from the cover that I am fishing. I primarily do this when I am fishing around rock structure, whether that's for largemouth, spotted bass, or smallmouth. But something you see in a lot of our major reservoirs these days is zebra mussels. And those zebra mussels are extremely sharp. And if you use a Keitech on a jig head in that situation, you're going to be constantly retying because of all those zebra mussels that are just constantly nicking your line. And on top of that, you might actually break off a big bass because you didn't know how nicked up your line was. So a great way to keep that Keitech off of the rock and off of the zebra mussels is on a drop shot. And another great thing about using that drop shot is you lose very few fish fishing it that way. Sometimes with a ball head, you tend to lose some fish from time to time. And by fishing that Keitech on the drop shot, you kind of take the weight out of play. And so therefore, it's very hard for that bass to toss that bait and you land a lot of fish this way. Now, the third way to rig up a Keitech is on a simple Texas rig. A lot of guys love fishing a Texas rig. We fish Texas rigs shallow. We fish Texas rigs in deep water. We fish them all over the place, but a lot of guys don't think about throwing a swim bait on their Kitech. Now, the biggest reason when I will throw a Kitech on a Texas rig is when I know that the bass are feeding heavily on bait fish like shad or different minnow baits. One of the biggest times of the year that I do this is during the shad spawn. Typically in May and in June, you're going to have a shad spawn on a lot of different lakes, and the bass feed heavily on bait fish during that time of the year. So if they want a bait fish presentation, but the situation that you're fishing really calls for a Texas rig, throw on a Kitech. It's a great way to still have that shad, that bait fish profile while being able to fish it under docks, in laydowns, around grass. This is really just something that is different. It's something that not every bass has seen. And I preach all the time on this channel, if you can be different, you are going to catch different fish than other guys catch. So try to throw that Kitech on a simple Texas rig. Now, the fourth way that I really like to fish a Kitech is actually on a flashy swimmer like the one that you see here. Now, a lot of guys, when they think about fishing this flashy swimmer, they're thinking about really big swim baits, 6, 7, 8-inch swim baits on a really big hook. But something that I really like to do is fish a smaller Kitech. This is actually just a 3.8-inch Kitech with a 3/0 flashy swimmer on it. This is something that I will throw a lot when the bass are feeding on really small bait fish. Towards the middle and end of summer, which we are actually kind of getting to, a lot of bass start feeding on really small bait fish, and it can be hard to catch those fish at times. But if you throw this flashy swimmer, this little blade that is on the bottom side of it looks exactly like one of those little shad, those little bait fish. So that flash from that little blade really attracts the fish from a distance, and once they get close, they just bite the entire thing. This presentation actually almost looks like a little school of bait fish in the water, and it's a great way to catch fish when they're feeding on those small bait fish. This is also one of my favorite presentations to fish the Kitech around grass. Anytime I'm fishing hydrilla, coontail, milfoil that is offshore, this really comes through that grass exceptionally well. As a matter of fact, I can actually kind of fish it like I do a chatterbait, where I kind of let this bait get hung in the grass and then I pop it free. And when I pop it free, that blade just dances all over the place. It attracts the fish from a distance and they will crush it just like a chatterbait. And just so you guys know, I'm going to link all the equipment like the flashy swimmer and all that stuff down below in the description. Now, the fifth and final way that I rig a Kitech is on a simple jig head. And I'm not really going to talk about this here because I did an entire video all about fishing a Kitech on a swim bait. I'm going to link it right here. If you guys enjoyed this video, you're going to like this one as well. Also, don't forget to subscribe, comment below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.